Hello, David Paul here. I think I should make a little video about this subject because it's a matter that people just ignore when they have houses, take over new houses, or start homesteading things and all kinds of stuff like that. So here I am. I'm up on the on one of my terraces above my house, which is over there. So what's this all about? Well, it's about this thing. This very pretty thing. This is a bougainvillea plant. It's not a tree, it's a climbing plant, but you can train them up as standards and they become a sort of approximation kind of a tree. What I did on the very front of the house is I planted one of these. I think it was a blue one because it was all I could get at the time, but I really like red, and this is a red one, and this is pretty much as good as it ever gets. I bought this and it wasn't looking too well, but I bought it Leroy Merlin or Leroy Merlin, depending on the pronunciation you like, and it had tiny little bits of flowers left, bracts, which were, if I say they're flowers, people will pick me up on that. They're not flowers, they're bracts, they're leaf bracts, never mind. So anyway, it had tiny little traces left, and I could see that it was probably a red one, so I'll take the chance on it, and I bought it, and I've given this thing tender love and care in the pot downstairs beside the tent, and I planted it a couple of weeks back in this spot. The reason why I planted it here is because on the front of the house, some guy with a strimmer, my plant survived all the winter and everything, but some guy with a strimmer obviously went past, strimmed it off, and that was a bit too much for it because it wasn't living in a very nice place to start with. And then this guy goes and chops it right down to the ground. I took it out and tried to revive it and plant it somewhere else, but it died. So this one is on my land where people don't go around strimming down my stuff, and so I guess it'll be all right. Now, this here is a bucket full of water with an added fertilizer in it. It's seaweed based, and it's called Atomic. I've put a load of pellets of organic fertilizer in with this thing because I'm nearing the time when I'm going to go and head off to England and then the Philippines. So it's going to be not until next April before I get back and see what this has done in the time when I've been away. So I wanted to have this thing on the house. So how am I going to get it on the house? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to train it along here and probably get it to root into the ground, lead it up onto the house over there. Where's a house? You can't see the house. There it is. Lead it up over onto the house like a giant sort of toupee thing, fling it over the roof, and that's as best as I can do. And I can also utilize some of it over this car parking area, so it'll just be, hopefully if it works, it'll be a blaze of colour. It will have the whole territory all to itself. It's all for you, bougainvillea. In fact, I was going to grow a grapevine up the house, and I've decided I'm not now, because why grow utilitarian things like grapes and cabbages and stuff around your house? You should have all the pretty stuff in the place where you're spending 99% of your time, and the rest of the time have stuff like cabbages and whatnot somewhere else where you just need to go and tend them. And that's that. There is a convenience factor of having vegetation next to your house. You can tend them easier, but really I don't have to go very far. We're only talking about 25-50 feet away. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I mixed up this fertilizer. And why is this important? Because this is a thing to think about if you get some land or you live certainly in central areas of a country. What tends to happen is in the central parts of countries, they can get depleted of various minerals, because the weather is continuously weathering out material from the system. So if you restore those minerals, those trace elements and all those goodies that the plants would really love to have, but they can't have it because it's all washed away hundreds of years ago and probably not being well looked after by human beings who stripped the vegetation off and taken away the nutrients. So what you do is replenish them. And the best way to do that is to use seaweed, because it's just hopping with everything you can use. Well, you can go down to the beach and you can gather seaweed, which I will do sometime, but at the minute I've got the seaweed fertilizer which I'm going to give it, and it is absolutely thriving. Now that is planted in the soil there, quite loose soil. I put some more soil on top to help consolidate it a bit, but the task for the bougainvillea now in the year when I leave it, its task is to grow, and to grow downwards into the soil and become independent and established. So the idea is I'm giving it entire bucketfuls of water, which will then wash down through the soil, put these trace elements in the vicinity of the bougainvillea so that it's got plenty of food. I've also put organic pellets down there, which are not seaweed based, but the little tiny balls. I put them down, quite a couple of handfuls of those down to sustain it. But the thing to kick it off, this thing, is this. Now the idea is that this will drain down into the soil, and it'll follow the roots, whatever available pathway there is down the soil that this thing can flow down. Well, of course, this now creates a sort of roadway for the roots of the bougainvillea to follow. And because I'm not here, there's going to be a bit of rain in the winter, and it's probably going to be all right. But because if there's no water available, then the bougainvillea has this thing to follow. Roots will follow water. So it will follow down after this bucket of water. I mean, this is not the only bucket of water that's gone down here, but this is the last one. It will follow down and get down deep into the soil and then really become established. So I'm going to nurse this like my baby, because it'll respond well, and as a consequence, it's going to grow like crazy, and I'll have this toupee thing over the house. Now, what happens is when you're farming, I'm doing an activity, horticulture or farming or anything like that. When you're doing that in the environment, which is the natural environment, this thing here, all this stuff, the natural environment also wants the goodies. So this here olive tree will start to prosper as a consequence of the food that I'm giving to the bougainvillea. And of course you end up in a situation where you're feeding the whole bloody world, like, just everything, because there's a whole network of mycorrhiza leading out from here, that the whole environment that you're in is being fed from stuff that you're putting into your system. So there's an argument there for isolating yourself from the natural world and growing things in, say, beds, like raised beds, or a thing called a wicking bed, and all kinds of things like that. I have my own idea on what I want to do. I'm probably going to create a bed here on one of these terraces, which will have a membrane in it to stop the leakage of water and nutrients and everything out. And then I'll be able to control things. And then I should be able to get a growing system established where the stuff just goes nuts. Now, this is not my idea. It's not, it's not unique to me anyway, because the people who are the masters of this sort of thing are the Dutch. And if you think about it, the Dutch, they're what you would call the expression batting on a sticky wicket. They don't have the easiest place to farm, Holland, because it's not that hot or warm. And the sunshine level is okay in the summer, but they're apparently the second largest agricultural producer in the world in this tiny little country. Now that may be in terms of value added to the crop, but that's still quite an achievement. So imagine what would happen if you took the Dutch and brought them somewhere here. And if you're Dutch and you're listening to this, get yourself down to Portugal and start farming. Go and see OK Portugal on YouTube. I mean, he's, I think, of Dutch origin, the guy on there. So, what else about this issue? Yeah, that's basically it. So, one of the next developments is this bed of vegetables that I'll be growing, and we'll see how this independent growing system works. Oh yeah, that was it. One time I actually had there's a conversation going on at school, and they were rather touchy and PC, this lot, and I had a bit of a reputation for saying controversial things. So they were talking about world hunger and food supply and how we're going to feed the world and this, that and the other. So I piped up and I said, well, it's easy, really, really simple. So they all look at me thinking, oh God, what's he going to say? He's going to say something controversial. So I just said to this bunch of teachers, I said, just put the Dutch in charge. So they all went quiet and they all looked at each other and I said, yeah, actually, have you seen those greenhouses I've got? They're amazing. And then that was the end of that. So I rest my case. Anyway, here we go. It's like a baptism of seaweed. So the idea, give it a little drink. Try not to let it run off. A little bit more. Don't run away. So this is, as I'm doing it, it's soaking down. It wants to go straight down, so let's give it the opportunity to do so, right? I've got about a quarter of a bucket away there. Don't push it. This is very loose, the soil around the bougainvillea, so it is taking it. Because I did also dig down a sort of cavity and then put all the soil back again. Stop putting it on. And a bit more. I'll try dribble it at a continuous rate, see if I can get it in at the rate that the soil is absorbing it. Well, that there, that will have gone a vast distance down because it's not showing any tendency to spread much. So that's going directly down into the soil. I wonder if there's deep soil here. I'll never know. I'm not going to dig it out to find out. Come on. Okay. Are we done? Now you might ask, where do I get my water from? Because I don't have water to the house, and I don't think I really want it. It's another opportunity for a bill. Okay, that's goodbye for 1 year, and I'll see you later. Oh, a little comment. You'll notice that these leaves here, that is not very good. That's not a very good colour green. If you contrast this with the more recent, newer growth here, Okay, this is extremely healthy. This is in a really healthy state. This is an amazingly healthy plant, this. And it's all because of my TLC. So what's wrong with this leaf? It's what you call chlorotic. It's short of nutrients, probably magnesium. And that was the direction that the plant was going in until I got my hands on it. So there you go. So that's the proof of the pudding. Right, I'm going to show you a thing called a levada. In Portugal, they have these systems called levadas, which are... I'm a bit sneezy now because I must have picked up some pollen or something. They've got these levada systems, and a person said to me, "Oh, you could wash things in it, and you could wash in it, and you could wash things in it. You know, like so you could wash yourself, shower using the water, and you could wash stuff like dishes and clothes." So I thought, ping, that's the answer, because what I've been doing is bringing bottles of water up from the nearby village, which has a central water font thing, and carrying it all the way home. Well, if we go down here, so all these people in America and all these homesteaders and stuff, and the number one thing they always say if you're going to homestead is you need to have water. You got to figure out where you're going to get water from. Well, you don't necessarily need to have water, but what you do have to have is you do have to have some means of getting it. Now you might truck it in, but that would be the last thing I'd want to do. So this is a levada which runs along there. There's some steps there in front of the house which you've probably seen on previous videos, and that runs along there towards that little, some kind of a mill house thing. And so it's running past the front of the house. I was told that there's possibly a stream at the back of the house. There is not. There's this levada. So what is the purpose of the levada? It goes under the road here, and it goes over here. Now I'm walking downhill, but the levada's flowing uphill and downhill in the opposite direction. So it's kind of a weird effect, but that is actually going uphill. Okay. What it is there's this overburden of earth here which is going uphill in the opposite direction. So it's not an optical illusion or anything, it's just the way the earth's been laid down. Now, this morning, to get the water for that plant, I came along to here. This is a really convenient little spot because you can actually just sit there and scoop it out. So I've got this bowl, you scoop some out, wash my cup there, and scoop it out of there. Now this water is clean. It's obviously got microorganisms in this, that and the other in it. You could probably drink it and get away with it. But there's a big problem in, well, it's not a big problem, it's just a few people, but it's a really nasty problem. In the United States, there are about 4 people, and a couple of them I think have died, have got amoeba on the brain. So you get these amoebae, which they reckon has got up their noses through swimming in fresh water. So what I do with this is, in future I will chlorinate it, and to chlorinate water in like a bucket, you'd need like a couple of mils of bleach dropped in, you know. I mean, you're talking about a teaspoonful of bleach dropped in, and that'll kill everything. So what I do at the minute is I just boil it. If you take it past about 80 degrees centigrade, that'll do it. So if I'm having a shower, I'll heat it up to the point where it's uncomfortable for me, and then I'll let it cool down to the temperature where I'm going to have the shower at, and then that's that. So there's a Levada. Now this thing flows all year round. It may get down to a very low level, but you got to imagine that your average person is probably, what am I using? About 3 gallons of water a day personally. And if we push it out a bit, let's say 5 gallons of water is all you need to live. And you got a house of 4, so you look at 20 gallons of water. Household of 4 people. And then you could even be a bit lavish and take it up to maybe 50. 50 gallons of water is not a lot of water. You really don't need a lot. And as for watering crops and this, that and the other, once you've finished with the water, it becomes grey water, dirty water. You're going to feed that to your crops. So they're not an additional consumption, they're just part of your own usage. And that's the advantage of having this water capture system, where you have a membrane underneath your crop to stop the environment pinching all the water, because the environment will do just fine on its own. It'll have what you give it, but here it is. This is the environment. It's growing fine. It's well rooted. Look at the size of this lot. It's rooted deeply into the soil, so along will come the dry summer, but the main things, the trees and everything, are down in the soil, deep, going into caverns and all sorts, pumping up their water, because there's plenty of water in Portugal. It's just not on the surface. So that's basically it. I've told you everything about this stuff now. So think of different ways of getting water. Now if you take this issue of water and you say, right, okay, you've got your water for washing and stuff, what do you do about drinking? Well, that brings in the possibility of distillation. You can set up solar still systems. You can also you could probably even distill the stuff on a stove. It takes about 0.6 of a kilowatt hour to distill a litre of water. But if you've got a stove on anywhere in the house, you're pumping that out. You're pumping loads of that out. So you can make the stuff in the winter time if you wanted. And that's all you need for your drinking water. So there you go. And you could actually take this water and run it through a sand filter, and then you could run it through a carbon filter. So even then you wouldn't be stuck, and you've got rainwater occasionally, which is just starting now. Okay, I'm going to call it a day on this one because it's starting to rain. Jesus be with you.